Appreciate you streaming in on a Tuesday morning with the Mac and Mac guy. John McMullen and Jody McDonald here on Birds 365. We are joined by one of our faves, longtime Eagle beat reporter, host of the Bowen on the Birds podcast, Les Bowen. Les, where'd you watch the game the other day?
Oh, from my luxurious TV room here in Haddon Township, New Jersey.
Did you miss the Molly Pitcher service area, Les?
I certainly did, but E.J. Smith, my former Inquirer colleague, sent me a photo from Molly Pitcher.
Nice.
And,
nice.
Paul Domowitch and I used to make that drive together quite a bit. We both live in South Jersey. And you have to get Molly Pitcher at its most desolate is like after a night game.
Yeah.
When you've been writing until like 1 a.m. and you get to Molly Pitcher about 2 a.m.
Oh,
it's a special ambiance there. With pigeons in the parking lot and people, long haul truckers asleep, stuff like that.
I think
the Roy Rogers chicken acquires a sort of
for many, do they still have a Roy Rogers there? Because I got to be honest, it's not that long of a drive, so I usually get something to eat before and just make the drive because I don't want to stop at the Molly. Nothing against the Molly Pitcher service area.
Well, we're talking about on the way home.
We've all got something against the Molly Pitcher service.
No.
What are you talking about, Johnny?
But I did say the Roy Rogers because they closed basically most of the Roy Rogers.
Okay. Well, I haven't been in a while,
Yeah.
The great thing about being retired is I don't have to do that now.
Yeah. They kept them open on the Jersey Turnpike, but there's new things. There's a Shake Shack. They've made a lot of changes. Yes. Yeah.
Now there's a Shake Shack.
Yeah.
All right. The reason I asked not to get off on a Molly Pitcher tangent was one of the beauties of watching the show from at home, not in the press box, not having to watch your P's and Q's, is you can actually emote while watching the game. You can have and show whatever emotions you want during the game. You throw anything off that Eagle loss against anything at the TV, anything at your wife, anything in general that would have done damage?
It's interesting, Jody. And as a watcher of the Eagles, even though I'm retired, I kind of still watch as an analyst, whereas the Phillies games, I definitely, my wife doesn't even like to watch the games with me. I am, she's in the next room chiming in there. No, I don't.
God bless her.
I'm like, that Twitter account, fake WIP caller that always has it's a Buddy Ryan avatar, and the guy always says ridiculous. That's me watching the Phillies. It's like fire Rob Thompson, kill everybody. It's the second inning. But with the Eagles, I'm not really like that. I'm a little more circumspect, and I kind of have a different way of looking at it, I guess. But that was that game Sunday. Every year there's going to be a game like that where the team, whatever team it is, loses a game it shouldn't lose. But when it actually happens, it always happens in such an infuriating manner that it's just, lose to the Jets, okay. Lose to the Jets without Aaron Rodgers, Sauce Gardner, the other starting corner, and 2/3 of the offensive line when the Jets can't even score a touchdown until you let them score one late in the game.
By the way, Nick wouldn't admit that. It's like,
that's stupid. His press conference yesterday was just
frustrating.
Yeah, it was terrible. But, the loss was so much more ridiculous than you could ever possibly imagine it being. And it was for the fans, it was just an incredibly, and there's a lot of this, they're 5-1. The fans in other cities where the team is 5-1 or, they're happy. And
well, the higher expectations, which is a part of it here, but
this isn't Detroit.
No. And sometimes the expectations are out of whack, but not this particular time. I mean, that's a bad loss. There's no way to spin that other than it's a bad loss. So, I want to tap in. We were talking about this yesterday, Les, and I want to get your thoughts. Coming out of the 2-minute warning, I thought the game was over. Third and 9, Jets had depleted their timeouts. They're done. You run the football, you drain 40 seconds off the clock, so they're going to get it back at maybe a minute 5. Zach Wilson, no timeouts. He's got to drive. Best case scenario, touchback for them. You still got to drive 40, 50 yards to get into any kind of field goal range. There was no evidence he was going to be able to do that. And they make the one decision they can't make. Now, that doesn't mean Jalen Hurts has to do what Jalen Hurts did either.
Right.
But we were talking about this yesterday, and I want to get your thoughts. So there's 3 pieces to this puzzle. The game manager, Nick Sirianni, the play caller, Brian Johnson, and the quarterback, Jalen Hurts. Let's stop blame Les Bowen. 100%. Give me how it shakes out for you.
Oh, well, a lot of that play is on Hurts. I mean, I've seen a couple of analyses of that play, and I believe the safety who intercepted the pass even said something after the game about the coaches told him that if he bluffed the blitz and dropped back, that Hurts would throw it right to him. I'm a little bit with Sirianni on that, who just flat out didn't believe that happened. I can't imagine they actually said that to him. For one thing, they have no way, I don't think, of knowing before the Eagles even line up that that's the play they're going to run. Yeah. But nonetheless, he's got to see. It was like he just saw the guy at the line of scrimmage and never, when he dropped back, just failed to notice the guy dropping right into the route. That just can't happen at this point in Jalen Hurts' career. Even though he had played, he was probably the most blameless offensive Eagle until that moment, I think. Yeah. And then he just gave the whole game away right there. And it was almost like that ridiculous fumble at the end of the was it the second game or the first game when he was running up the middle and in the final minutes of the game and dove forward and lost the ball. Remember that? Was it game 1?
I remember the Super Bowl where
this year when he was yeah. But anyway, the other 2 parts of it are in play as well. You set Jalen Hurts up to be in a situation like that shouldn't be that precarious. The play call, you're right. You run the ball there. I just don't like this offense. Ought to be unstoppable. It ought to dictate to defenses what's going to happen. And instead we get all this, well, they did this and we weren't able to do that. And, how about you do something to screw them up? I just don't understand. You got Dallas Goedert, Devontae Smith, A.J. Brown, DeAndre Swift, and Jalen Hurts. And even without Lane Johnson, a pretty good offensive line. Why are you scoreless in the second half of a football game? That just boggles my mind.
And here's one of the reasons, and John and I went through this yesterday, he put a great majority of the blame on Nick. I had it more shared. Nick numero uno, but I shared the blame with both the offensive coordinator and the quarterback. And something you just said might make me move my needle with Jalen Hurts and maybe give him a little bit more blame for that play. Sirianni, both after the game and again yesterday, doubled down on it, said that the decision to go for it there and pass rather than attempt to run and take time off the clock was in part because they had just succeeded doing that. That in that drive, they were faced with a third down and they converted on a pass to Dallas Goedert. So now you're same thing, running for 1, running for no gain. Now it's 3rd and 9, even a little tougher to convert. But he goes right back to Dallas Goedert again. Is Jalen Hurts becoming predictable?
Well, the offense certainly is. I don't know if it's Hurts necessarily, but that's one of my real questions here is, how do teams know, what's going to happen sometimes when certain things come up? When Nick was asked about the business with what the safety said after the game, he went into this thing about, well, we'd only used that play once on third down before, which wasn't at all. It didn't address the major issues. The major issues were, I guess from something in the formation, they had a pretty good idea of the play. B, that Hurts would throw the ball even though the safety had dropped back into coverage. Those are the things that he was being asked to comment on, not how often they ran that play on third down. I think he kind of knew that. I mean, I think he kind of does what Jim Schwartz used to do with talking about the Baltimore Orioles. He just goes off on some, he pretends that he was asking a different question than the one he was asked.
Yeah, filibuster, man.
Schwartz never did that. What are you talking about?
Schwartz, he was the best at that. He would go off for 20 minutes and then he'd be done. Yeah.
Earlier I wish I had the question up in front of me, John, but early in the thing, he was asked about a sequence of plays, and he gets all bogged down in, I think it was 2nd and 8. No, maybe it was 2nd and 6. Oh, it might have been 2nd and 5. But anyway, we were,
and he does it on purpose. Yeah. Well, I asked him about helping Jack Driscoll, and he got in the weeds about, personnel groupings and, empty sets and, that kind of thing. He knows what I was asking.
Right. And it was a very good question because
thank you, Les.
Nick said something after the game about he was making excuses for the lack of passing dynamism, without the fact that the passing attack wasn't very effective in the second half. He said something about how they had to help out. They had to keep somebody in to help out Driscoll. Well, I rewatched the second half of that game yesterday. They didn't have the all 22 up, but I rewatched the broadcast version, and there were a few plays, most notably that one really long gainer to AJ Brown that was challenged by the Jets. They did help Driscoll on that. They had a running back help him, and it worked.
Which you mentioned,
it kept the pocket clean. But a lot of those other snaps, there was no, especially that second interception where it was Driscoll's guy that came in and
Jermaine Johnson.
Arm. Yeah. It was they left Driscoll on an island. The three inside guys, Dickerson, Kelsey, and Opeta, were 3-on-2 with the inside rushers, and they just left Driscoll out there. And he got turned around, and he was facing his own goal line, and it was a disaster. And
and that's one of the luxuries they have with Lane and Jordan Mailata. They leave them on an island.
Yes,
and that was my thought process was, well, you got to shift in game a little bit more quickly to realize that, all right, we can't just leave the right tackle on an island, and that's not anything. Hey. The week before, they had time to prepare for Aaron Donald. They slid everything his way because they knew Sua Opeta was in the game. You got to do that, I think, a little bit more quickly in game to help Jack Driscoll. It'll probably be better this week if Lane can't play.
Oh, yeah, I believe that too. But right after Driscoll came in, so Jack Driscoll played a lot 2 years ago, hardly played at all last year. This year had only played on like extra points and stuff like that, had not taken an offensive snap. Right after they bring him in, they're in the red zone and they run some kind of goofy thing where he has to go over to the left side. Did you see that? And it was a disaster. The guy just came in the game for the first time all year.
I
am just not impressed with the way they manage the game offensively.
Now, manage the game. Can I jump in? I know you want to go, Jody, but I just want to follow up with Les. And this is the problem I had with Nick in the end of game situation. Because as you know, Les, he gave up play calling to manage those situations. Now, if it's 3rd and 9 and Aaron Rodgers is the Jets quarterback, I'm with you.
Yeah,
go for it. Try to win the game.
Right.
There's got to be some, there's got to be some context and say, all right, look at this situation. I don't have to go for the green. I can lay up and I can get out of here with a win with Zach Wilson. Yes. I think he's had so much success being aggressive.
Yeah.
So much success with this team as a whole. They think the big play is their domain. Nobody else can make a big play. And that's not the case, I think. And that's why I kind of lean towards this is the reason he gave up play calling, to manage these situations. And I think he managed it poorly considering who was on the other side of the football.
And you also have to take into context how the game is going. The whole second half has just been you stubbing your foot. It's 14-12 when you were up 14-3 and you should have at least 10 more points. You've missed a 37-yard field goal, the best kicker in the league, for crying out loud, just about, other than Tucker.
Devontae Smith's dropping the football.
Yeah. Dallas Goedert handing the football to the defensive guys. I mean, it's just you got to kind of read the room a little bit. I mean, from the minute Jake Elliott missed that field goal, I would have bet. I don't bet on football games, but if I could have made one of those in-game bets, I would have bet on the Jets to win, because that's just the whole thing was just going off a cliff right there.
All right. I'm going to ask a question that will annoy the entire stream, I guarantee you, and probably annoy both of you two guys. But
all right,
I will tell you ahead of time, the answer is not 0. John might tell me it's 0. You might tell me it's 0. I'm telling you it's not 0. If they get lit up this week by the Miami Dolphins, that they come in and put up a 42 spot on this maybe still injured, no Jalen Carter, no Reed Blankenship, got explanations after the fact defense, but they put up a 42 spot and look like the greatest show on turf, dirt, earth, whatever you want to call it. And Eagles offense struggles again. And I have no problem saying Eagle offense struggled this week against the Jets. Their red zone efficiency is what it is, one of the worst in the league. Is there any chance that before their next game, the head coach announces that he's taking back play calling from his offensive coordinator?
Oh, yeah.
The head coach of the Dolphins does a pretty good job, even as the head coach, actually calling the plays of the best offense in football. What is the percentage chance that Nick Sirianni says, yeah, I don't need to be hearing about McMahon and McDonald saying it was, I should have stepped in up to agree. No, I'm taking it all on my plate. It's back to me. I'm calling plays. What's the chance that Nick Sirianni? First of all, the Eagles got to get crushed, which I'm hoping is not the case. But if it does happen, is there any chance Sirianni says, yeah, I'm taking the play calling back?
Well, if all of that stuff happens, like you outlined it, sure, there's a chance. My end game there is the reason he gave it up was that he wasn't doing it very well. I mean, they were what, 2-5 when he gave up play calling?
Yeah, it was actually the Chargers game, so they were, 2-4-ish.
Would that help anything? But yes, I don't think everything you're saying will come true. I have no idea what will happen this weekend, but I think they'll get some of those guys back. The way this season is going, though, who knows who they're going to lose during this game? That's really the overarching theme of this season so far is the injuries and the instability, that they didn't have last year. That just keeps coming up. Darius Slay didn't miss any games last year. This just can't. The offensive line wasn't down 2 starters at any point, I don't think, last year. That this is what's going to be their biggest challenge. I mean, they're going to go through a tough slate of games coming up, but in the season overall, they just keep. Important pieces just keep falling off the table or getting put aside for 4 weeks or whatever. And you can't live that way. And it's got to stop. You've got to have a little bit better luck with this somehow to keep this going.
No, well, you never say never, because, who knows? In the world we live in, somebody can get ill for a week and he might have to call plays. So I'll go. I'm not going to go 0%, but I'm going to go 1%. He does not want to call plays. He doesn't think he can. And that's why I put so much blame on him, because he gave up play calling to manage the game. And he thinks he can't manage the game properly while he's calling plays. And he said that pretty consistently behind the scenes. And I believe him. Here's the only thing. If things go drastically wrong, and by the way, the second ranked offense in the NFL, so I think people piling on Brian Johnson is kind of silly. However, if things go drastically wrong, I think then if there was a change, it would be Kevin Patullo calling plays, not Nick Sirianni.
Good thought. Very good thought. Yeah.
So I don't think it's going to be.
I was going to suggest Kelsey myself.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
I think that would work, but
he can handle the protections.
But what you just said about, I wanted to follow up what you just said about the second ranked offense. To me, I was thinking about that last night. I saw it. Maybe it was you on Twitter that mentioned it. The second ranked offense to me is kind of like last year's defense and its high ranking. When we all kind of knew in the back of our minds, it isn't what it ought to be, and they get a lot of yards. They killed the Jets in yards Sunday. Unfortunately, that's not how you decide games. They're terrible in the red zone. They did a little better Sunday in the red zone, but the efficiency ratings that all these newfangled stats that all these young people have, the efficiency ratings and things like that are not good.
And that's why the issue is the red zone. Like they're top 10 in everything except red zone, and they haven't finished drives, and too much has been, Jake Elliott field goals. And that's fair to say. The red zone has been an issue. And the Eagles haven't figured out the adjustments to them. But I think it was Rube, and I was trying to figure out the numbers between last year's offense and this year's offense are almost identical through 6 games. And the only difference is they're not scoring in the red zone. Right. And that's fair. I mean, they need to figure that out.
There's one other big difference. They're turning the ball over. And turned the ball over last year.
Well, they turned it over some, but the defense
got 7 already this year. Yeah. At some point, you got to factor that in. So you can just look at the dead numbers. Okay, fine, yards per everything. Yeah. How about turnovers? That can end up.
Well, that's what they were -4, so that kind of skews it. They were obviously awful against the Jets, but up to that point, the turnovers hadn't been that big of an issue. They were still plus. They were still, I forget what they were, +4 coming in, maybe, which is not terrible. But obviously, -4 in one game, that's a disaster.
But last year's offense at this time, and it's hard to remember back that far, but there was a lot of the offense wasn't running beautifully every minute a year ago, but we kind of chalked it up to, okay, they're A.J. Brown is this new weapon that's been introduced, and Hurts is still, he was very much proving himself this time last year. I think we were more forgiving of mistakes. This is a different situation. This is a team that went to the Super Bowl and scored a whole bunch of points in the Super Bowl and probably should have won the Super Bowl. And by outscoring the other team, by having an incredible offense. And we haven't seen that offense yet. We really haven't.
With AJ, we have. That's about it. AJ.
Yeah, and it's like that's kind of their get out of jail this year is just throw the ball up for AJ and he'll come down with it. That's great that they can do that, but I'd sure like to see what the hell was the deal with Devontae Smith and Dallas Goedert Sunday? They looked like 2, practice squad guys. You might as well have had Greg Ward and Calcaterra out there in their spots. I don't get it. Are they not designing these plays right?
I think when Devontae drops the football, and Devontae, to his credit, after the game, somebody asked him what's the teaching point? He said, catch the damn ball. I mean, I mean, he never drops the football, and he dropped it twice. And you kind of chalk that up to, all right, he had a bad day. Mm-hmm. And that doesn't happen that often. I think that's going to be self-correcting. But I do want to, and I'm going to say this for the first time out loud to you guys. You know, I don't know what it is, but Dallas Goedert isn't playing like Dallas Goedert.
That's right.
And this is the entire season, not just in that particular game.
We talked about a lack of targets early, but was a lack of targets, lack of being open? I don't know.
So I was looking at the PFF rankings today for this team. And Devontae Smith is 65 of 112. That ain't Devontae Smith level of play.
No.
You know, what's scary is Olamide Zaccheaus and Quez Watkins are tied 103 of 112 receivers. That's not good.
Yeah.
Kenny Gainwell.
Yeah, but there's the threat. That doesn't come through in the PFF rankings. The threat of Quez Watkins. You got to factor that in.
Either way, they both stink. Kenny Gainwell, there's 54 graded running backs. Kenny Gainwell's 54 of 54.
Yeah.
Jack Stoll is 66 of 68 at tight end. Guys are not playing like they're supposed to be playing.
Agreed.
At one point, are people going to recognize and say, maybe at certain positions, we overrated this team a little bit? Is it fair to say that?
Well, you've seen Dallas Goedert play before, right? I mean, is he overrated?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, no. Devontae Smith, overrated? No. Something is not happening here, either in coaching or the play design or communication. That would be my thought, really. Now, Zaccheaus and Quez Watkins, I mean, I guess they aren't that good. Zaccheaus is on the field for almost every snap last Sunday, because Quez Watkins was hurt. And I think he caught one pass that was called back or something.
Not effective. Yeah.
Let's see if you agree with me on this. Here's where I think John's point is legit. And we're talking about expectations and Eagle fans / Philadelphia Eagle media. Everyone, well, I shouldn't say everyone. A lot of people always think that if player A is of a certain age and experience, whatever, the next year is going to be a step up. Yeah. He's going to improve. Yes. He's going to get better. Doesn't always work that way.
No.
Ooh, Kenny Gainwell. And John, you know how much this ticks me off. Kenny Gainwell showed out in the playoffs last year.
He did, yeah.
Baloney. He had one game. He played well against the Giants. He didn't play well against San Francisco. Just because he played more than Miles Sanders did in the Super Bowl doesn't mean he played well. But, Kenny Gainwell's ready to take that big step up. Kenny Gainwell is going to be – Kenny Gainwell's gone backwards. Not gone another step forward as some people projected. Yeah. He's actually gone backwards. And that
I agree. And he had a terrible drop backwards. By the way,
he had a terrible drop as well. Yeah,
he did. On a play where Hurts did an amazing job scrambling out of a sack, running headlong to the sideline, which is hard as hell as a quarterback. He's running as fast as he can. There's a guy right on him, and he throws it down the sideline. It's third down. Gainwell is just past the sticks. It's a first down, and he drops the ball. It's a low pass.
Drops, man.
It's a low pass, but it's right in his breadbasket. There's no defender, with an arm in or anything like that. He just drops the ball, and they punted, And, you just can't. You think in the moment that's not a huge deal, but you put together moments like that, and it's a huge deal. There's just not. They keep talking about this standard, that there's a standard here.
The standard.
They talk about it a lot, but when are we going to see it on the field? You know, they don't play tremendously efficient, smart, you know, error-free football. They just talk about it.
At Les Bowen, make sure you follow Les on Twitter. Bowen on the Birds, the podcast where you get all your favorite podcasts. Does a tremendous job there. Let's give the defense some love, though. I don't know. Can we? I mean, the numbers were great, but it's Zach Wilson, you know, so you factor that into it. But, you know, they had a ton of injuries on that side of the ball. That you didn't have Jalen Carter, but the pass rush was still getting home. The linebackers, you know, Nick Morrow continues to play well. They get Nakobe Dean involved. They have some issues injury-wise in the secondary, but they persevered. Is that Sean Desai, or is that just here comes Tua instead of Zach Wilson this week?
I will see, and that's a very good question. I don't know the answer. I do think he did a very good job of getting a secondary together. I mean, he lost guys during the game. Reed Blankenship, you know,
Roby as well.
Roby. It could have been just a total, you know, it could have been like Jack Driscoll, only defensively, and it wasn't. So I do give him credit. What you said about the pass rush. Now, they did have 5 sacks.
Yeah.
A
lot of pressures, too.
First half wasn't – they don't ever get their hands up. So whenever there's a quick drop and a throw, it's going to work because nobody on the Eagles is going to, you know, do what the other teams do to the Eagles and stop that with hands up. I didn't think the pass rush was consistent. I thought it was great in the fourth quarter, which was the case the week before as well. I wanted to see a lot more of that early in the game. I wanted to see them really get Zach Wilson messed up and turning the ball over. And they really didn't do that. I mean, he got pretty comfortable back there.
Well, you definitely didn't turn it over, so you got to give him credit for that.
Yeah.
You know,
but they shut down the run without Jalen Carter, which was a question I think a lot of people had, you know, whether they'd be able to do that. The excellent running back there in Breece Hall, and he really didn't have a big effect on the game. So, yeah, I liked the job Sean Desai did overall, but we will see about Tungaloa this week. You know, it could be like last year's defense when he got to the Super Bowl. I don't know, but I want to see who comes back this week. It's critical. You know, who's going to play?
Last one for me. Right now, we've got a 3-way tie between you, me, and Derek Barnett for pressures this year. Yeah. We are all tied at 0. Derek Barnett on 49 passing snaps has 0 pressures. So he and I are all tied at 0. Will Derek Barnett break the tie this Sunday?
Probably not. For one thing, I think the snaps will go down a little bit. If they get Carter back, they'll probably, you know, even though Carter's not a defensive end, they'll, you know, the rotation will change a little bit. Maybe, you know, Brandon Graham will get more snaps. I don't know, but Derek, he doesn't kill you out there. I mean, he's decent against the run, I guess, but he's not giving you anything. And people want Nolan Smith, but
Nolan has not played well.
To me, looks like a safety trying to play pass rusher. I saw him on that end around that the Jets had good success with Sunday, just sort of standing there, walled off from the play, right around his edge, the edge he was supposed to be setting. I don't know.
They're going to have to figure out how to use Nolan Smith, Les, because they need to
very
have limited
15 pounds of muscle on him first, and then figure out how to use him, unless they're going to play him at safety, which is what he looks like.
Quick aside on that, because everybody notices that Nakobe Dean's a little undersized for his position, height, weight, everything. A lot of people like to point that out. How come nobody did that with Nolan Smith this summer?
Oh,
all throughout camp. Oh my God, he's looking great. He's speed off the edge. The NASCAR package when he and Barnett come in. He's undersized.
Well, I think going into the draft, there was a lot of talk about that.
I think
he was drafted at the end of the first round.
Yeah.
I think based on his production and his skill, he would have gone earlier had he been a little bit bigger.
Yeah.
But there's been, there have been guys like that have been successful lately. And I think
it's changed a little bit.
People aren't as scared of that body type as they used to be. But when you see him out there, it's evident that he's not an NFL pass rusher yet. I don't know if it's strictly size or if there's moves that he has to learn or tricks that he has to learn. But
I don't know. There's a joke, probably Les, that Penn State pro days are notorious for they have Olympic level athletes because the numbers that come out of Penn State are just absurd. So everybody knows they're budging a little bit. Now, then you get Micah Parsons, and hey, it's Micah Parsons, but they budged the numbers. I don't know with Georgia, but you've seen Nakobe Dean. He doesn't look 231 to me. No. Nolan Smith, they list him at 238. I don't think he's seen 238. So I think they're
he's seen 228.
Yeah. So I heard a lot of talk about Nolan Smith's size, and he's also only 6'2". Yeah. And I think people in Philadelphia said, well, Hassan Reddick, who's undersized and turned into a all-pro level player. Yeah, he's the exception. That doesn't mean everybody can do it.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
Whenever this kind of stuff comes up, I always think of when I was much, much younger, when Charles Barkley played for the Sixers, when he first came up from Auburn. And there was this chubby 6'4" guy who was at a time when
Charles was 238.
Yeah. But at the time, the NBA was a lot about the big guys, the tall guys, and this 6'4" guy, he's a great rebounder. So every overweight, undersized forward that came out of college for the next 10 years was the next Charles Barkley. But how many next Charles Barkleys did there turn out to be?
Yeah.
Yeah.
All I'm saying, guys, is leading up to the season, after he became an Eagle, officially put on an Eagle uniform, I don't remember one guest that we had on, or my partner, saying,
"Oh, come on." I go back. I've said it numerous times.
Yeah, but he's undersized. I honestly don't remember you saying that, John.
Oh, yeah. I mean, he's undersized. I say it about Nakobe as well.
Right. I kind of looked at him
we're all saying it today because he's struggling through 6 games and hasn't made an impact yet. I'm talking about back in the summer when he's flashing at practice. All the guests we have on that are with you at practice. I remember one guy saying,
the guy weighs
200
size. The guy weighs 235 pounds, and I'm giving him some weight. I say Hassan Reddick's undersized. Why wouldn't I say Nolan Smith is undersized? I mean, he's undersized.
Undersized and projecting it's going to be a learning curve, and he's not going to be able to step in and play, and he's going to have to. I don't remember anybody saying that, John. Anybody.
Well, I kind of thought at draft time there was a lot
more conversation of this guy's going to develop, this guy's going to jump in, this guy's going to be a factor this year for the Philadelphia Eagles. He's a complete non-factor.
Are you sure you're not thinking about Jalen Carter?
Yeah,
because on draft night I thought he was kind of a guy that they were stockpiling. I didn't think he was going to be a big factor this season, but you're right. He did.
John and I did. We both knew that Jalen Carter was coming in right off day one. It was going to be a star.
But I will say that training camp is a great venue for guys like that who, there's no hitting. So you're just rushing the passer in a void sort of. And your speed and your, all those things are more evident than any other attributes, that you might have. That the great Lorenzo Booker summer of whatever the hell that was, 2008 or 2009, they got this running back, Lorenzo Booker, who was supposed to be the next Brian Westbrook. But
don't forget Henry Josie.
Again, to be Brian Westbrook, you have to be built like Brian Westbrook or Darren Sproles, where you have like an incredibly strong lower body and torque and power. And Lorenzo Booker was a little skinny guy, and he looked wonderful in training camp. But then they started playing games, and he would get squashed like a bug. You know, arm tackle.
Well, to Les's point, and Donnell Pumphrey the same way.
Oh,
it was
yes,
21
Pumphrey was exactly like Lorenzo Booker.
21 Pony looked phenomenal in T-shirts, where Darren Sproles and Donnell Pumphrey were on the field at the same time. Les, if you remember that year, Doug Peterson rolled out and they called it 21 Pony. I remember it.
Yeah.
And then they got to training camp and the pads came on. They said, "Oh, somebody's got a block. We're never going to see this again." And I do remember saying specifically about Nolan Smith. I remember one thing I wrote and said, let's wait until Lane Johnson gets his hands on him with the pads, because I think he's going to have an issue with a big, powerful guy like that. And, you know, but Lane's a future Hall of Famer. So I do remember that one criticism. And Les is right, because we've seen a lot of training camps. And when you're athletic, it shows up in training camp, but it doesn't necessarily show up when the pads come on.
Les Bowen, it's always a pleasure when you jump in with us. We thank you much for doing it today. Tell Mrs. Bowen she can comment in the background anytime she desires.
We kept you late. We apologize.
We need her input too. Thanks for jumping in, Les.
Thanks, Les.
Thank you, guys. Have a good day.
You too.
Bowen on the Birds podcast. Check it out. Les still doing a lot of Eagles work, and we love it when he jumps on with us here on Birds 365. All right, Mac and Mac coming back in just a couple. Stay with us.